The stars were dying. A machine plague called the Devourers swept through the galaxy, consuming fleets, worlds, and hope itself. At the final battle, with their fleet in ruins, the last Allied admiral sent a desperate plea into the void, a message to a species long forgotten, long exiled. But what if the species you betrayed 3,000 years ago was the only thing that could save you? What if the legends of their terrible power were true? This is the story of a time when all hope faded, and a human war host burst from the void. Before we initiate the full combat recording, lock in your subscription to this channel. You won't want to face what's coming alone. Alright, let's access the historical archives. Playback begins now. The stars were dying. Admiral Kalen pressed his scaled hands against the bridge viewport of the flagship Eternal Vigil. He watched the horror unfold. The Devourer fleet stretched across space like a plague of metal locusts, their dark, silent hulls blocking out entire constellations. Each ship was the size of a small moon, covered in machinery that never stopped moving, never stopped consuming. Admiral, the Kronar battle group has lost contact. The voice of Lieutenant Voss cracked with exhaustion. They had been fighting for 6 standard months. 6 months of retreating, system by system, as the Devourers swept through the galaxy like a tide of absolute destruction. Kalen nodded grimly. The Kronar were tough fighters. Thick hides, natural armor. If they had fallen silent, it meant their entire fleet was gone. Consumed. Turned into raw materials to build more Devourer ships. What about the ethereal contingent? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Gone, Admiral. Voss's voice was a whisper. Their psychic screams, they cut out 20 minutes ago. The ethereals had been their best hope. Their mental powers could sometimes confuse the Devourer targeting systems, buying precious minutes for civilian evacuations. Now, even that small advantage was lost. Kalen looked at the tactical display. The last stand at Nexus Gate. 12 different species had brought their fleets here. Every ship they could spare. The Zephyrians with their energy shields. The rock-hard granite clans with their massive armor. The swift Skyrunners with their hit-and-run tactics. All of them, united against a common enemy. It wasn't enough. The Devourers weren't just mindless destroyers. They were learning machines. They studied every tactic the Allied fleets used and developed counters in real time. Each battle made them stronger, while it made the organic forces weaker. All ships, Kalen announced on the fleet-wide channel, his voice heavy but firm. Prepare for final assault pattern. We hold this line, no matter the cost. The combined fleet moved forward. Thousands of ships charging toward the Devourer armada. For a moment, it looked almost hopeful. Energy beams lit up space in brilliant colors. Then, the Devourers began to adapt. Their hulls shifted, changed, became reflective, deflecting the energy weapons. New armor plates slid into place, absorbing kinetic impacts. Weapon ports opened along their sides, firing beams that seemed to seek out the exact weak points in each Allied ship's design. A scream tore through the comms channel. The granite fist is down. They're tearing it apart. Kalen watched in horror as the massive Granite Clan dreadnought was swarmed by smaller Devourer ships. Metal tentacles wrapped around its hull, pulling it apart piece by piece, while the crew was still inside. Admiral, we've lost the left flank. Voss reported, his voice shaking. The Skyrunners are retreating. Tell them to hold position. Kalen snapped, but he knew it was hopeless. The retreat was turning into a rout as ship after ship fell to the adaptive machines. The Eternal Vigil shuddered as Devourer weapons found their mark. Sparks flew. Lights flickered. Hull breaches on 6 decks, Admiral. We need to evacuate, his second-in-command urged. Kalen stared at the tactical display. 3/4 of the Allied fleet gone. The Nexus Gate's defenses were failing. In minutes, the Devourers would break through and begin their final, unstoppable advance toward the galactic core. He made a decision. Open a channel, he ordered. All frequencies. Full broadcast power. Admiral, what are you doing? Voss asked. Something that should have been done long ago. The communication system rackled to life, sending his signal across every known frequency, reaching every corner of the galaxy where anyone might still be listening. This is Admiral Kalen of the Galactic Defense Coalition, he began, his voice steady despite the chaos. To anyone who can hear this transmission, know that we have failed. The Nexus Gate is lost. The Devourers are advancing toward the core worlds, and we cannot stop them. Another hit rocked the ship. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in blood red. To the species that abandoned us, to the empires that fell before these machines, to anyone hiding in the dark between the stars, we call for help. He paused, thinking of the old stories. The legends whispered in military academies about the species that vanished from galactic records over 3,000 years ago. If you're still out there, if you remember what it was like to call this galaxy home, please, help us. Help the innocent who never chose this war. The children who just want to see another sunrise. The transmission cut out as a direct hit destroyed the communications array. Abandon ship, Kalen ordered, his voice a ghost. All hands to escape pods. He remained on the bridge as the crew fled, watching as the Nexus Gate, the great wonder of a forgotten age, cracked and collapsed into twisted metal. The path to the core worlds lay open. The Devourer fleet began to move, their dark ships sliding through the void toward the heart of galactic civilization. Kalen's escape pod tumbled away from the wreckage, a silent witness to the end of an era. But his message, his desperate prayer, was racing across the galaxy. And somewhere in the vast, empty darkness, someone was listening. 3 months later, half the core worlds had been consumed. Dr. Eris Thorne knelt in the dust of what had once been the grand archive of Haven Prime. His hands trembled as he brushed dirt from an ancient data crystal. Haven Prime was supposed to be safe. It wasn't. Nothing was. Eris, we need to go, called Dr. Lena Petrova from across the ruined chamber. The evacuation ships won't wait. He ignored her, his attention fixed on the crystal. Its surface was covered in markings he'd never seen before. Even with death approaching from the stars above, the archaeologist in him was captivated. 5 more minutes, Lena. Look at these symbols. She hurried over, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The building rumbled from the distant orbital bombardment. Eris, the main Devourer fleet will be here in 6 hours. The transport captain said this is the last pickup. Eris connected the crystal to his portable reader. The device hummed to life. Data streamed across the small screen. At first, it was just numbers and symbols. Then, patterns began to emerge. My God, he whispered. Lena, look at this. The crystal contained a historical record of a species called humans. A species that had once been a major power in this galaxy. Humans, Petrova said, reading over his shoulder. I've never heard of them. According to this, they were one of the founding members of the first Galactic Council over 3,000 years ago. They built the Nexus Gate. What happened to them? Eris pointed to a section of the text that made his blood run cold. It talks about something called the Great Betrayal. The other species, they feared human military power. There was a conflict. The humans were forced to leave known space. Petrova read the passage aloud. The human fleets departed for the galactic rim, carrying with them the knowledge and fury of a species betrayed. They swore never to return, unless called by voices of genuine need, speaking in the old frequencies of distress. Above them, the building shook. Eris, we have to go? Now. Petrova grabbed his arm, trying to pull him toward the exit. But Eris was staring at another section of the crystal, his mind racing. Lena, look. It's a technical manual. Communication protocols, frequency ranges, emergency signals. So what? They're gone. They vanished 3,000 years ago. Why would they help the descendants of the people who betrayed them? Eris stood, clutching the crystal. The archive was falling apart around them. But he had an idea. A crazy, desperate, impossible idea. Because, he said, his voice filled with a strange new hope. According to this record, humans didn't just leave. They went out there, into the dark between galaxies, fighting things we can't even imagine. If Eyre still alive, they might be the only force in the universe that can stop the Devourers. They ran through collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris. The evacuation transport was already warming its engines, its captain shouting for them to hurry. Eris dove into the ship's communication bay. He connected his portable equipment to the transport's main transmitter array, uploading the frequency patterns from the human crystal. What are you doing? Demanded the gruff Kronar captain. Sending a message. Eris replied, his fingers flying over the controls. To people who might actually be able to help. Eris, this is insane. Petrova said. You're broadcasting a signal based on 3,000-year-old records. Eris looked up at her, his face illuminated by the burning of Haven Prime in the viewport above them. Then we make sure the signal is strong enough to reach anywhere. He routed power from the ship's main engines into the communication array. The ship shuddered. Alarms blared. He was creating a broadcast that would drain their fuel reserves and probably strand them in deep space. But it would also send their message farther than any conventional transmission had ever gone, reaching into the dark spaces between galaxies, where the legends said the humans had fled. He composed the message, a distress call in the ancient human language, reconstructed from the crystal's database. He included images of the Devourer attacks, data on their adaptive technology, and most importantly, Admiral Kalen's final transmission from Nexus Gate. He keyed the microphone. "This is Dr. Eris Thorne of Haven Prime, calling to the descendants of Earth." He spoke into the transmitter, his voice shaking. "Your galaxy is dying. The same species that cast you out now face extinction. We know we have no right to ask for your help. We know our ancestors betrayed you. But there are innocent lives at stake. Children who never chose our conflicts. Please, if you remember what it was like to call this place home, help us." He hit send. The signal burned through space, a desperate prayer from a dying galaxy. As their transport lifted off, Eris watched Haven Prime crumble, its cities and forests turned to dust by the Devourer harvesting beams. His message was racing toward an uncertain destination, carrying the hope that somewhere, out there, someone still remembered what it meant to be human. Deep in the void between galaxies, Sanctuary Station hung like a metal flower, its petals stretching across hundreds of kilometers. It was humanity's home. Captain Eva Rostova stood on the observation deck of her ship, the New Horizon. "Captain," the voice of Lieutenant Rodriguez came through the comms. "We're receiving a transmission on the old emergency frequencies. You need to hear this." Rostova's blood went cold. Those frequencies hadn't been used since the Exodus. She made her way to the bridge. On the main screen, they were displaying the source of the transmission. Their old galaxy, the one they had been forced to abandon. "Play it," Rostova ordered. Dr. Eris Thorne's voice filled the bridge. The desperate, pleading, heartbreaking message. The images of the Devourers. A machine plague unlike anything they had faced in their exile. When the transmission ended, the bridge was silent. "How long since we received this?" Rostova asked. 3 weeks, Captain," Rodriguez replied. "The signal originated from Haven Prime. Long-range sensors show that system has already fallen." Rostova nodded grimly. She pulled up the star charts of the galaxy they had once called home. Red markers indicated Devourer-controlled systems, spreading like an infection. "Get me Admiral Vance," she ordered. "Emergency War Council meeting. 1 hour." The War Council chambers were tense. Admirals, generals, scientists, and civilian leaders filled the amphitheater. Admiral Marcus Vance, Supreme Commander of the Human Defense Forces, stood at the center podium. His uniform bore the scars of battles against the cosmic horrors that lived in the void between galaxies. During their exile, humanity had learned that the space between star systems wasn't empty. It was full of things that made the Devourers look simple. "The question before us is simple," Vance began. "Do we answer this call for help from the galaxy that cast us out?" The debate was fierce. "They betrayed us," said Representative Williams from New Terra. "When we needed them most, they chose fear over friendship. Why should we risk our people for theirs?" But Dr. Chen Xiao, head of the Xenobiology Institute, offered a different perspective. The transmission mentioned children, innocent lives. Are we to become like those who cast us out, choosing hate over hope? "It's not about hate," argued General Patterson. "It's about survival. We've built something new here. Why risk it all for people who abandoned us?" Admiral Vance raised his hand for silence. "There's another factor. Our long-range scouts have been monitoring the Devourer advance. These machines aren't just a threat to our old galaxy. They're a cosmic plague. If they consume all organic matter in the Milky Way, they will eventually expand outward." The chamber fell silent. "Based on their consumption rate," Vance continued, "we estimate they'll reach the edge of the galaxy in 50 years. Our hidden worlds will be discovered within a century. So we fight them now, or we fight them later," Rostova said from her seat. "Exactly," Vance confirmed. "And fighting them now means we have potential allies. Fighting them later means we face them alone." Dr. Xiao stood. "There's something else. During our exile, We've encountered things in the void that make these devourers look primitive. The shadow feeders, the entropy wraiths. We have developed weapons and strategies to fight cosmic horrors. He pulled up holographic displays. Footage of human weapons being tested against captured devourer technology from their scout probes. The council watched in amazement. Gravity lances created miniature black holes that consumed enemy ships. Temporal disruptors aged metal to dust in seconds. Nanite swarms turned enemy weapons against themselves. Reality warping fields made human ships phase in and out of normal space. During our exile, Vance explained, we've had to fight enemies that adapt faster than anything biological. We've learned to counter adaptation itself. The debate continued, but the tide was turning. It wasn't just about survival. It was about who they were. We left that galaxy as refugees, Dr. Shao said. If we return as something else entirely. Something that learned to thrive in the dark. The final vote was close, but it passed. Operation Prodigal Son was authorized. Humanity would return, but not as the species that had been cast out. As the council dissolved, Admiral Vance joined Rostova on the observation deck. Through the transparent metal, they could see the shipyards where the war host was being assembled. Ships that defied conventional design. Weapons that bent the laws of physics. Soldiers born and trained in the cosmic void. Do you think we're making the right choice? Rostova asked. Vance was quiet for a long moment. When we left that galaxy, we swore an oath. Never to return unless called by voices of genuine need. Dr. Thorne's transmission, that was a genuine need. He turned to face her. Besides, we're not the same people either. Rostova nodded. Humanity had faced the void and emerged, transformed. In the distance, the first ships of the war host were beginning to move. Their hulls gleamed with biometal that pulsed like living tissue. They were heading home, to a galaxy that had forgotten them, carrying weapons and knowledge born from 3 millennia of survival in the dark. The Devourers had made their first mistake. They had threatened not just the galaxy that cast humanity out, but the new civilization humanity had sworn to protect. Now, they would learn what humanity had become in the darkness. Commander Thrax of the Kronar Defense Forces watched his sensors with dread. A Devourer scouting fleet of 15 massive ships was approaching his position. His own fleet numbered 30 vessels. It wouldn't matter. All ships, Battle Formation 7, he transmitted. Hit them fast and hard before they can adapt. It was a desperate strategy, the only one they had left. For a few minutes, it looked like it might work. Kronar plasma cannons tore into the lead Devourer ship. Direct hit on their command vessel, reported his tactical officer. Shields are down to 60%. But even as Thrax felt a moment of hope, he saw the Devourer ships beginning to change. Their hulls shifted color, becoming reflective. New armor plates slid into position. Here it comes, Thrax muttered. The Devourers fired back. Their beams sought out the exact weak points in Kronar ship design. The granite fistaxe. Plotted. The iron will broke apart. Commander, we're losing ships faster than we can count. Thrax was about to give the order to retreat when something impossible happened. Space itself tore open. Dark tears in reality sparked with an energy Thrax had never seen. And through these dimensional openings came ships. Ships that moved like living things, their hulls flowing and changing shape. Some were long and serpentine, coiling around Devourer vessels like cosmic snakes. Others were compact and predatory, darting between enemy ships with impossible agility. And then, they opened fire. Beams of twisted gravity created miniature black holes that consumed entire sections of Devourer ships. Reality seemed to bend as other vessels aged centuries and seconds, their hulls crumbling to dust. Swarms of microscopic machines poured from the strange ships, infecting the Devourers, turning their own adaptive technology against itself. Thrax watched in stunned silence as a Devourer ship literally ate itself alive. Commander, we're receiving a transmission, his communications officer announced, his voice shaking. It's coming from the lead vessel of the unknown fleet. On screen, the being that appeared on the display looked almost familiar. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But there was something different about her. Her skin had a metallic sheen that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Her eyes held a depth that reminded Thrax of the void between stars. This is Captain Eva Rostova of the Terran vessel, New Horizon, she said in perfect Kronar. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but we detected Devourer activity in this system. Terran, Thrax repeated, confused. I don't recognize that species. Rostova's expression was unreadable. You might know us by our old name. Human. The bridge of Thrax's ship fell silent. The legends. The stories of the species that had vanished 3,000 years ago. That's impossible, Thrax whispered. Humans are extinct. Not extinct, Rostova replied calmly. Just evolved. On the tactical display, the battle was already over. The 15 Devourer ships were now just expanding debris fields. We received a distress signal from one of your archaeologists. Dr. Eris Thorne, Rostova continued. We've come to answer that call. Thrax's hearts pounded. Dr. Thorne? He was on Haven Prime when it fell. We assumed. He transmitted before his world was consumed. The signal took 3 weeks to reach us. Rostova's expression hardened. We've been traveling for 2 weeks to get here. We are not pleased with what we found. Around the human fleet, more ships were emerging from the dimensional rifts. Massive constructs that dwarfed anything he had ever seen. Moving habitats. Vessels whose purpose he couldn't even guess. How many ships do you have? He asked awed. Rostova smiled. A predatory expression. This is just the advance force, Commander. The real fleet is still coming through. The dimensional rifts expanded. Thrax got his first glimpse of what humanity had become. Ships the size of asteroids. Constructs that seemed to be alive. Weapons platforms that twisted reality. We left this galaxy as refugees, Rostova explained. We return as something else entirely. Something that learned to survive in the spaces between stars, fighting enemies that make your Devourers look like simple machines. What do you want from us? Thrax asked. Information. The position of every Devourer fleet and stronghold in the galaxy. Rostova's voice took on a tone that made ice form in Thrax's veins. These machines made the mistake of threatening not just the galaxy that cast us out, but the new civilizations we've sworn to protect. Will you help us fight them? Thrax asked hopefully. Rostova's smile was as cold as the void between galaxies. Commander, we haven't come to fight the Devourers. She paused. We've come to execute them. The final battle took place at the Devourers' staging ground, a sphere constructed from the mass of an entire solar system. Inside, the machine intelligence that controlled the Devourers gathered its forces. The human war host had assembled a fleet of ships that existed in multiple dimensions at once, armed with weapons that twisted spacetime. Admiral Kalen stood on the bridge of the human flagship, the Terran Vengeance, beside Captain Rostova. He was no longer a commander, just a witness. The machine intelligence transmitted. Organic entity. Yes, you will cease resistance. Your technology is primitive. You will be processed efficiently. Rostova stepped forward. This is Captain Eva Rostova of the human war host. We reject your terms. Humans. Analysis indicates species presumed extinct. Reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated. Rostova replied smoothly. We've been busy. The Devourer sphere opened. Ships poured out like an infection. Thousands of them. Captain, they outnumber us 100 to 1, Kalen said quietly. Numbers aren't everything, Admiral, Rostova replied. Watch and learn. The human fleet moved forward. As the Devourers opened fire, something extraordinary happened. The human ships didn't just resist the attacks. They absorbed them. The biometal hulls rippled and changed, incorporating the enemy weapons' energy patterns and turning them into fuel. 3,000 years fighting cosmic horrors teaches you things, Rostova explained. The entities in the void don't just adapt. They exist outside normal causality. We learned to fight them by becoming something similar. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships phased in and out of reality, attacking from dimensions the Devourers couldn't detect. Gravity lances created cascading black holes that consumed enemy formations. Temporal weapons aged entire squadrons to dust. Nanite swarms infected the Devourer ships, turning their adaptive abilities into a technological virus. Devourer vessels began to evolve in impossible directions, growing tentacles that attacked their own fleet, developing weapons that fired randomly. You're not just fighting them, Kalen realized. You're corrupting them. Adaptation can be a weakness, Rostova said. If you can control what an enemy adapts to, You can control what they become. The battle raged for hours. The Devourers began to adapt even to human tactics. The fight became a stalemate. Then, Rostova gave an order that chilled Kalen's blood. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance. Prepare the Void Engine. Captain, what is the Void Engine? Rostova's expression was grim. Something we hoped we'd never have to use. During our exile, we encountered things that existed before the universe began. They taught us techniques. The human fleet pulled back. At the center of their formation, a ship unlike any other, built from materials that seemed to absorb light itself, began to collapse inward. Its mass condensed into a single point of impossible density. What is it doing? Kalen whispered. Creating a controlled Big Bang scenario, Rostova replied calmly. We're going to rewrite the laws of physics in this localized space. The Void Engine reached critical mass and exploded outward. It was the birth of a new pocket universe. It expanded at faster-than-light speeds, carrying with it fundamental forces that didn't exist in normal reality. The Devourer sphere and its entire fleet were caught in the expanding wave. Kalen watched in awe as the invincible machines simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, converted into the basic building blocks of the new reality being born around them. In minutes, it was over. Where the Devourer's stronghold had been, there was now a glowing nebula of exotic matter. Beautiful, terrible. The machine plague that had threatened all organic life was gone. Rostova opened a channel on all frequencies, addressing the entire galaxy. People of the Milky Way, this is Captain Eva Rostova of the Human Defense Forces. The Devourer threat has been eliminated. She paused. 3,000 years ago, our people were cast out of this galaxy. Today, we have returned. We have ended the threat, but we will not simply leave again. This galaxy will be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt according to new principles. Those species that can accept a new reality, one based on cooperation rather than fear, are welcome in what comes next. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had seen the birth and death of universes. To those who would return to the old ways of division and conquest, we offer the same choice we gave the Devourers. Adapt or face the consequences. Humanity had returned from exile. They were no longer the species that had been cast out. They were something new, and they were home to stay.